All right, so we're talking today about a 3-panel set and an 8-foot trench. We're going to assume that First In companies have already been there and found some ground pads that they have set parallel to the trench face. And they've already talked to the competent person and they have a good idea of what's going on. We're showing up now and we're going to start securing the trench for operations so that we can put panels in place and go in and actually rescue the victim. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take these ground pads that have been set parallel to the trench face and we're going to set them perpendicular to trench face. We're going to throw down our 6x6s so that we can run the girders across the trench, and we'll throw our scaffolding down. Whenever we set our initial panels, the initial panel set is going to go in where the victim is, and we want to cover the head and the torso, so that's where all the vital stuff is. So we're going to set our first panel set there, and then we're going to throw our positioning strut. Think of the positioning strut like our Stop the Crush strut. So we put that in there, and that's going to buy us some time while we work on the remaining 2 struts.
All right, now we're going to install our positioning strut. We've got air to it, we got a rope on each end, we've got a swivel base on each end, we've measured for the strut. We're going to put it right in the middle of the panel. All right, hold yours, Boudris, down just a little bit, Shawless. All right, looks level, shoot it to 100.
Shoot it to 100.
All right, we would observe the trench. Trench looks good. Take it to 150. All right, and we would go to 200, but we are not because we want to be able to undo it.
The remaining 2 struts are called the backfill strut and the compliance strut. Backfill strut is going to fall into wherever there's been a trench failure. So if we've had a failure at the lip of the trench, the backfill strut is going to go there because we say whatever's happened on this side of the trench is more than likely going to happen on this side. So we want to buy some time and keep this side from failing while we secure the rest of the trench. So in this case, we're going to say that there's been a lip failure, so we're going to put backfill up here. The bottom strut becomes our compliance strut, and that just means that we keep in line with the 2-4-2 spacing. 2 foot from the lip of the trench, 2 foot up from the toe of the trench, and maximum of 4 foot spacing in between.
Yeah, scoot to the left. There you go, there it's good. All right, shoot it.
Shooting it, go to 100.
All right, you should have a Y between the positioning strut and the bottom strut right now. All right, take both red and or all struts to 150. All right, and if the trench would allow, in real world, we would go to 200.
The second and third panel sets are going to go on either side of the victim to give the victim more safety and then us a little bit more working room. So we're going to set the second panel here closer to the head. Depending on what the trench has given us, if we still have a failure up at the lip, then you may have to put a positioning strut in on this one. But if there's no failure, then you can get away with the backfill and compliance struts, just one at the top and one at the bottom. Order doesn't necessarily matter depending on what the trench is doing. And then the same thing over here. On the positioning strut, initially we're going to charge that to 100 PSI. Depending on what the trench does, if the soil is pretty competent and it holds, you can take it up to full pressure while you're working on these other 2 struts, and that'll hold this panel in place pretty well. Just remember to put this one on a Y with either one of these 2, because whenever you take these to full pressure, that middle one's going to want to drop out, and we don't want it to fall on our patient. Same thing with these 2, try to get them on a Y, charge them at the same time if you're just doing 2 different struts. All right, so whenever we're talking about the shoring components of the trench and getting an accurate measurement for what size strut we need to choose, we got to keep in mind that we're going to take the measurement of the trench overall, but then we need to subtract the pieces that are going to eat into that space. So you've got the fin form, which is 3/4 of an inch thick. We have our strong backs, which are 1 3/4 thick. So together, that makes those 2.5 inches. We got one on both sides, so that's a total of 5 inches. Then we're using a swivel base on each side. Each of those is 1 3/4 inches. So together that's 3.5 inches. So together, whenever we take the overall trench width, we need to subtract both fin form and both swivel bases, which add up to 8.5 inches. So just go ahead and take 9 inches off to account for all of that. And that's going to be our measurement. That's the size strut we're going to choose. Setting the panels, there's 2 different ways to set them. You can do same side set or opposite side set. It's really just kind of the way that it says it is. Same side means I'm standing on this side of the trench when I drop this panel in place. Opposite means that I'm standing on this side while I'm putting this panel in place. The best way to do that is to get some lumber, some 4x4s or something you got sitting around, and run them across and make just a little rail system for that thing to slide in whenever you stand it up. When we're setting panels in the trench, the way that we want to orient the ropes is we come through the face of the panel. This would be the trench wall here. Come through the face, run it down the back, and then back out to the front of it. And we want to grab this back piece of rope here and pull up. So whenever we do that, it forces that bottom edge of that panel down into the toe of the trench. If we don't get that to seat well, whenever we set that in, this is our pseudo trench wall, there ends up being like a little mound of dirt right there that pushes up against, which leaves a gap in between our trench wall. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to encourage any open space between these panels, because we don't want to encourage any type of soil movement back here that could dislodge our panel set.
Buggy loop around and help them too.
We definitely want to have on each of these struts, each strut gets its own air hose. It's not like the old Speed Shores where you pop off the hydraulic hose and move on to the next one. These have an air hose attached to them, and that stays attached the duration of the incident. So if something moves, you have the ability to charge it and tighten it down. And then whenever we go to remove the struts, we've got to charge them again so we can break those collars loose. So every strut has its own air hose. We just coil it at the top of the popsicle stick and move it up out of the way. For the panel set, this is just for an 8-foot trench. These are 8-foot panels with 10-foot sticks on the top of them. If we're doing an 8-foot trench, we always say that we want to do as many panels as the trench is wide. So 4-foot panels, 8-foot trench. So 2 of these would be 8 foot. We add an extra one for safety. So that thought process follows through even deeper trenches. You do as many panels as the trench is wide, plus an extra set for safety. And then strut pressures are 100 PSI for a soft set. You can work up to 150, and then 175 on the golds, 200 on the grays is your hard set pressure. You don't want to go over that because then it's going to be hard for you to break those collars loose at the end.
The bottom. All right, this will be our last compliant strut. All right, look square. Shoot it to 100.
Shoot it to 100.
All right, now we have both struts on a Y. Taking both to 150. All right, and we would take both to 200 if we were in a trench. All right, and that is our 3-panel set.